I've got nothing rogue in the background, have we? No. Oh, I can't hear you anymore, anybody? Well, that's weird. Good morning and a very warm welcome. I'm broadcaster Helen Fospero and I'll be your host, guiding you through this event. It's great to have so many of you back and to see new faces joining us for the first time. Public sector digital transformation is being delivered to you by Public Sector Executive. The day will be packed full of opportunities to network and acquire current sector knowledge, whether this knowledge is gained from our speakers or event partners in the digital marketplace. There's plenty of opportunity. We'd like to thank the industry leaders and experts who are with us today to share their invaluable insights. The content standard on our PSE 365 platform means that all of the content is CPD certified. For every hour of content you watch live, you'll earn 1 CPD point. To get your certificate, please email the PSE team at marketing@cognitivepublishing.com. That's marketing@cognitivepublishing.com, and they'll sort it out for you. In addition to CPD, you can give back through some friendly competition. Our gamification tools will be active, which means you can score points by engaging with the platform's different elements. For example, if you join a live session, there's 50 points earned. Make a connection with another delegate in the platform, that's 100 points. Or ask a question in a session or engage with one of our exhibitors in the digital marketplace, you earn another 50. I'm sure you get the gist, so why not have a go? At the end of the event, those who finish in first, second and third places respectively will have 250, 150 and £100 donated in their name and organisation to More Trees. More Trees plant a tree for every £1 donated. So to be in with a chance of winning, all you have to do is engage with all the great content we have and with your fellow delegates. Alongside the panel discussions on the agenda for you to enjoy, we have some fantastic networking opportunities through our speed networking function. When you collaborate with colleagues, that's another great source of education. It also, of course, helps to extend the knowledge and connections shared today, which can be accessed at any time, ultimately growing our PSE 365 community. And on that note, a reminder about our PSE platform. You and your teams can access a wealth of resources as part of our on-demand content alongside the digital marketplace. We value your views, so feel free to share your thoughts and experience across socials using the hashtag PSE365, so PSE365. So let's move on to the focus of today. If there was one major positive, even she says, popping her teeth back in, to come out of the pandemic, it would probably be the acceleration of digital transformation. Whilst the pandemic brought in a new regime for most, the number of public sector staff working from home, delivering healthcare and services digitally, increased exponentially. Was it smooth sailing? Adopting the new way of working brought challenges, such as having the right infrastructure, access to data and resources, using cloud services, and security. At the end of 2020, 94% of UK homes had internet access, up from around 89% in 2019. And we spent an average of 3 hours, 37 minutes a day on smartphones, tablets, and computers. Video calling became an important way for people to keep in touch. Providers of the technology experienced extraordinarily rapid growth, from a few 100,000 users in the first 2 months of 2020 to more than 13 million in April and May that same year. More recently, there's been the call for civil servants to return to the office. This call, in essence, doesn't diminish the need for the continued transformation of legacy systems to digital, though, as in some quarters, a proportion of civil servants remain working from home. Here's a quote from Heather Wheeler, the Parliamentary Secretary at the Cabinet Office. The government have some excellent digital services and examples of digital transformation, but we still need to harness the full potential of digital transformation at scale. Many services are in need of improvement to deliver the right outcomes. Our technology in need of refreshing to give value for money. We have significant and persistent gaps in skills and expertise, and our business systems are in need of reform to keep pace with the digital age. If we maintain the current course, we will miss opportunities to deliver the experiences and outcomes that citizens expect, and we've committed to deliver. We will see talented digital and data professionals choosing to work elsewhere, and will miss out on efficiency savings. Against the backdrop of the policy paper released on June the 9th, Transforming for a Future 2022 to 2025 Roadmap for Digital and Data, this event will provide opportunities to listen, learn, and ask those across the spectrum from design to delivery those pressing questions to ensure your department is on the right track. So to start us off, we have HMRC's Chief Digital and Information Officer with us, Daljit Rehal. Daljit is responsible for the technology powering one of the biggest digitally enabled transformations anywhere in Europe. He's a senior technology and data executive with broad experience in the sector, including modernising digital capabilities, adopting big data, artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies, and agile methods, leading change. Before joining HMR Revenue and Customs in September 2020, Daljit was Global Digital and Data Services Director at Centrica. He's previously held senior positions at TalkTalk and Virgin Media. So please welcome him to our virtual stage. There's no sound on him. They might cut out of it though, so just stand by.
Hello, I'm Daljit Rehal. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I do hope you enjoy this video. Now, I've been at HMRC for just over 2 years, and I'm going to talk to you about what I've been focused on in helping to drive a digital transformation at HMRC. So, HMRC is a technology business, and we have 200 plus digital services with routinely high level of customer satisfaction rates. We have 29 million registered personal tax account users, 5.5 million business tax account users, just under 3 million mobile app users, and our APIs received 1 billion calls last year.
Just watch, sometimes you put your arm across and then I can't.
Transformation starts with being able to have the right conversations. To really help operational and policy areas address their key challenges, we need to be able to have the right conversation about how the technology can unlock business challenges. And one way in which I've done this is
time to record it, hasn't it?
create a number of
I wrote it like that.
teach-in sessions, where we pick a topic and we invite senior leaders and decision makers in the CDIO and IT areas, as well as in the business areas. And we all try and aim to have a basic level of understanding about that topic, so that we all got a common understanding of the terminology and how to apply it, etc., in solving business problems. These topics have included everything from what does it mean to be in the cloud, why should you care about it, through to artificial intelligence and machine learning. We've even talked about distributed ledger technology and blockchains, and this continues. So we've got other sessions like this planned, and by doing that, I do believe that it's allowed us to kind of move to the center together as IT and business teams, by having that common understanding of what technology is making possible for us. And to do this, I've done it through some of these talks were done by people in my own team, and giving them the opportunity to speak to the wider HMRC community about their specialism, which could be cloud, it could be data science, it could be a number of things, it could be cyber security, etc. And also I've tapped into my partner network, so suppliers have been really keen to help me with this. So I've asked them, can you provide me with somebody to come and do a talk on something like AI? Then it's never been a problem. I've had really good content through the supplier network, and we've been able to have those conversations. And all of that really is part of the reason it's allowed us to talk in a similar way about how we want to deliver technology change for which business benefits the technology will really unlock for us. It's allowed us to have those focused conversations. And it's also part of what I've done here is to reframe the IT strategy. And we now talk about a future in which you have product teams and platform teams. And in that product space, we have, agility, we have configurability, and in the platform space, we have that sort of traditional, more IT engineering discipline, but nonetheless, the products consume the services the platforms provide, and that will allow us to have a sort of almost like a bimodal operating model. And I'm as the CDIO, I'm giving the leaders the building blocks to or develop our estate in such a way that it allows us to achieve this. And really, the aim is to try and get as many changes as we want to make to be configurable changes rather than changes that require heavy engineering. And my teams would ensure the platforms run and can do what's needed from the platform, and the platform needs to align with our technology roadmaps and goals. And the product teams, which will be a hybrid of business and CDIO teams, can then start really going to work in a very agile way, creating new products and services. In addition to that, one of the things that we're making a part of the strategy is to exploit low code and no code as much as possible, especially in that product domain. And so this, I think, not only allows business teams to now do things in a much more user-friendly fashion, it's naturally more agile, but I think it also is a form of future-proofing the skills gap in that not everything needs the IT expert, and a lot of things can be achieved if we were to embrace a world in which we allow our sort of hybrid teams to do low code, no code, and therefore not be too dependent on a future skill force that is highly specialized, the coding type of skills force. And so far, I haven't really talked about how I'm doing this with my partners, so I'm just going to mention that now. We at HMRC can't do this on our own. We need to have a partner ecosystem that allows us to do this. Innovation is one of our values in HMRC, and we won't be able to keep on improving our services and innovating them without having, access to the right technology. And our partners are playing a big role in that because they've got a bigger footprint than us. They've got more access to technology. They've all got technology-focused future departments. So we want to tap into that through them. And really, in July this year, HMRC's 5 largest IT contracts ended, and we successfully moved to 29 new, smaller, more flexible contracts as part of our technology sourcing program. And we're going to continue to do this. We're going to continue to go to competitive tendering on a regular basis, giving us access to very latest technology, including new ideas as they come along. This would really mean that we can build a digital tax system that does more to help customers get their tax and payments right the first time, and reduces the error and fraud, and it fits seamlessly in with the way people run their businesses and their lives. One of the things that we are struggling with here, like everybody else, we're in need of modernization of our IT estate, and we're grappling with the legacy technology. So we're working with a broad range of partners to help us to modernize our estate, provide a more reliable, responsive, and secure set of services to help build the trust in HMRC. We've already moved more than 1/3 of our IT estate out of data centers and into the cloud, and we are now looking forward to completing that task and starting to make the most out of the tooling available to us in the cloud. With services increasingly delivered to customers and colleagues over the internet, partners will be responsible for the hardware instead of HMRC, through the cloud, and obviously we've got to grow our disciplines around making all of that secure and compliant with our standards, etc. But it will just make it easier for us to change services and scale them up to meet the business peaks. It also means we're able to stand up new services faster and make full use of the extra computing power that our cloud partners can provide us with. So we'll take advantage of that latest technology. Take artificial intelligence. We've been using this in the department's risking and analytics work, but it has the power to change how we work in a more fundamental way. An example of AI is, we receive 14 million pages of documents by post a year, and we are now using AI-based automation that reads those documents and processes millions of pages. This frees up HMRC colleagues to do more higher value and more rewarding work. We're also, working with government digital services, and I think this government digital roadmap presents us with great opportunities. It gives us a chance to collectively refocus on some of the biggest challenges we as departments face, and we could solve them once. How customers prove their identity is a good example. Most HMRC customers can access our online services, but we know some are unable to prove their identity to transact with us in an online fashion. So I'm really excited about one login for government as a way of solving that challenge efficiently as a cross-government mission, and we're already starting to see the benefits from this work. In August of this year, HMRC became the first department to adopt gov.uk ID checks, letting some of our customers use the camera on their phone to confirm a match with their driving license. And over the next few months, we'll work with the government digital services to make this option available to more customers, and also we'll seek to put them on a wider range of devices, including the ID options that are native to those devices. Gov.uk ID check is a component of one login for government that I'm certain will eventually replace the government gateway. So there's a brilliant example there, and there are other cross-government sort of collaborations. But look, with all of that, I just wanted to bring my talk to a close and really say thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of the work that we're doing here at HMRC. I hope you find something in what I said to inspire you and take back to your departments from today's sessions. Thank you very much.
film for us and share such an insight into your work at HMRC. So to our first leaders debate, digital skills at scale. The last 12 months have highlighted the digital skills shortages inhibiting the sector's capacity to adapt to technological change and demand. Following the release of the Transforming for a Digital Future report, all departments will have a roadmap and a committed date for reflecting the diversity of the UK population across their DDAT workforce. More than 90% of senior civil servants will be upskilled on digital and data essentials and receive annual training. Departments will also strengthen their offer to existing and prospective talent by aligning role definitions to the DDAT capability framework. They'll reduce the average time to hire to 30 days and reduce the number of vacancies to 10% of the DDAT headcount. With those demands on departments, how does the sector ensure that the skills needed to implement and deliver the desired outcomes are achieved? Well, here to discuss, we have Jonathan Pownell, Senior Digital Specialist at the National Audit Office, Youssef Toucan, Senior Solution Consultant at Coursera, Lee Dunn, Head of the Scottish Digital Academy, Heather Covercus, Head of Central Government Programme at Tech UK, and Thomas Beautyman, Deputy Director Government Digital Capability at Cabinet Office. It's great when these debates are a conversation, including your voices. So please do use the Q&A function, and I'll do my best to get through as many questions as I have once we get started. So a very warm welcome to all my guests. Lovely to see a full house for panel one of today. Just putting my specs on so I can actually see you. Let's kick off with Thomas, if we can. Thomas, what is the scale of the skills challenge the government seeking to address? Give us a sense of just how big it is.
Well, great to be here and nice to meet you, Helen. So if we take a bit of a step back and think about the scale of challenges that faces at the moment, we have something like about 20,000 digital and data makers in government. So these are the people in our government, user researchers, delivery managers, software engineers, and so on. These are the people who are building out the systems that we need in the future. We have something in the region of about 4,000 vacancies as it stands. But we know also that we're in a really, really competitive market. We've seen numbers of vacancies in the UK for digital rise by something like about 70% over the course of the last year. We're in a really, really competitive market. And every day, our organisation has to work really hard to both attract in new talent and fill those vacancies we've talked about, but also make sure that we're in a position to hang on to those people and upskill as we go the really critical resource that we've already got, which are those digital makers. The other side of the coin, in terms of the challenge that we're facing, is everybody else. So if we think about the UK civil service, it's comprised of something like about 450,000. My contention would be that everybody has a role to play in transforming digital services. And we need to find a way to give everybody the skills and the confidence that they need to play their part.
We'll explore that area a little bit later. Let's bring Lee into the conversation. Lee, where do you think, from a Scottish perspective, the digital skills gaps at the moment, and how bad is it where you are? Oh, hang on, Lee. We just need a bit of sound on you, if that's okay. Let's get some sound on Lee. Try again, Lee, if that's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So, good morning, and good morning to everybody else watching as well. I want to start off just by picking up on the point that Thomas made there, because I completely agree. Certainly in Scotland, we as in my team, have our remit across the digital data and technology profession in Scottish Government and across the wider public and third sector in Scotland, but also including everybody else who works in public and third sector. And we need to recognise that there is a need to upskill and reskill across the piece. So the challenge is significant, but that doesn't mean to say that it's not insurmountable. Certainly within Scotland, we're starting to see a number of skills gaps across a variety of themes, but I think it's also worth reflecting that a skills gap does not necessarily have to be an entire theme. So within the DDAT capability framework, when we consider the awareness, working practitioner, expert skill levels, it may be that there's a skills gap in the expert level and the practitioner level. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is a gap across the entire spectrum of skills. So within Scotland, we've carried out a skills survey, so we have a pretty good idea of exactly where the gaps are, but we also know where the strengths are, and we have strengths around leadership capability and expert skill levels in quality assurance and testing and product management. But we do see skills gap at an awareness level and working level around things like cybersecurity, information resilience, looking at areas of penetration testing. And we also have to caveat some of those skills gaps that they may not actually be gaps that need to be addressed as a priority. So as an example, the penetration testing is largely outsourced to another organisation or a supplier. So it's a very small number of people in Scottish government and Scottish public sector who actually require that skill. So I guess there's three components to that. There is looking across the wider piece, all of those who need digital skills, including those in the digital data and technology profession, looking at those who have specialist skills, and it's a smaller number, and weighing up that against everybody else, and also that consideration of skill level and where we perhaps need to address that. Interestingly, agile ways of working is an increasingly complex environment because we're now moving away from just the transformation of digital products and services, but also thinking about how we can apply those methodologies into policy and HR functions, finance functions, to try and create a much more efficient service overall. So I think we've still got a little bit more work to do in that space.
Thank you. Let's move on to Youssef. Youssef, at Coursera, you work on a lot of leadership programs, as well as a lot of public sector upskilling programs. Just wondering what kind of trends you're seeing.
Thank you, everyone. Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think for me, if I could really summarize it, to me, what I'm finding is that need for skill development at scale has never been more urgent, but at the same time, it's never been more accessible. And we see today, like the speed of acceleration that we've seen around digital transformation over the last 2 years, the need to be able to provide, data-related skills, technology-related skills has never been more urgent. You heard Lee talking about it, and even Daljit, hearing him talk earlier about, getting 1 billion API calls to his website per year. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, governments are becoming technology service providers in a lot of ways. So that gap and that urgency, has never been greater. But at the same time, the really nice thing about it is that the ability to drive that skill development at scale has never been more accessible. And I think for a lot of us, what we saw is that online learning, like remote working, like Zoom, really had a moment during the pandemic when people realized that something that seemed a little bit unthinkable or a little bit difficult became a lot more accessible and a lot easier. And so what we're seeing today, is the speed with which governments are able to now scale that learning and skill development thanks to technologies like online learning.
Fantastic. Let's bring Jonathan into the conversation. Heather, I haven't forgotten you. There's a lot of you to get around on this panel. Jonathan, the National Audit Office reported on the national skills gap back in 2015. I think it was 7 years ago. Just how, what changes you've seen. Have there been some good improvements, or would we, do we still have to try much harder on this front?
Right. Well, hi. Just check you can hear me first of all.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Brilliant. I got a brand new laptop yesterday, so I was checking.
Congratulations. Very good.
Well, past by refresh. Yeah, so back in 2015, because we look at this from the perspective of government as a whole, of course, and not just the detailed level skills, but overall skills to lead transformation. So what we said back then is the scope needs to be broad enough to lead and govern digital transformation, understand business models, operational implications, and deliver that organisation cultural change. And it's not just about the technical skills to design, build and operate new services. And we spoke to many of the CDIOs across government at that time. And I have to say, quite very few of them actually believed that the initiatives back then in 2015 would be enough to bridge the gap. And the biggest challenges they saw back then were on funding and pay. And fewer than half were positive at that time about their organisation's workforce plans. So fast forward 6 years to 2021, and we published a report last year on the challenges in implementing digital change. We came back to this theme, and again we spoke to many of the CDIOs in government and a lot of suppliers. And to be honest, we found that the issues that we previously identified, quite a lot of them were still current. So again, we said capacity is needed at all stages and needs to be thought through up front. Government has lacked that, the internal skills and capability to deliver the scale and the complexity of its ambitious digital programme. And technology expertise was underrepresented at senior levels compared to other policy areas and finance, those professional areas. So all of that's made it difficult for departmental leadership to understand the complexities around transformation. So we're not saying that there aren't some excellent people in the DDAT profession, because there certainly are, but for us it's about whether there's enough of them and in the right places in the organisations, and whether they have a voice at the top table.
Well, I'll get Thomas to respond to that in a minute, but I do want to obviously bring Heather into the conversation first. I mean, Heather, please do feel free to comment on anything else our other panelists have said this morning, but I was going to ask you where you thought government's biggest challenges would be in this time, and where they should prioritise.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me on. Really pleased to be here. I think, I think some of the biggest challenges that the government faces, and we all face really, is that, the digital skills isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening within a context of a very changing sort of social landscape, a very changing political landscape. And so it's sort of trying to navigate what's being thrown at us in terms of what's happening with the economy, the sort of, competition with private sector for getting those skills in. And so, there are lots of different external factors in addition to sort of understanding the scale of the challenge within government. It's how do we meet that within the current context that we find ourselves in, where people are used to working remotely now. And, we cannot have this call for everyone to be in the office and expect to sort of meet those skills demands and get the same types of people in, in the same way. And so, there's a need to sort of respond to the changing environment that we find ourselves in, and to be agile and to understand that people's expectations of work are different now. And, technology has allowed us to be effective and capable outside of the office as well. And, that we need to sort of acknowledge that and sort of build that into, how do we make it work for everyone? And that'll help us to address, filling this skills gap.
Thanks, Heather. I mean, we are living in very different times, but also perhaps exciting times. I don't remember a time in my lifetime where there's been such a rapid move. The digital transformation has been extraordinary to see, but obviously it comes with its challenges. Thomas, I did just want to give you a chance to respond to what Jonathan said about, that there hadn't been as much progress as perhaps hoped since their report in 2015. If you wanted to add to that, and then I'll ask you the kind of next question, if that's okay.
I wasn't around in 2015, and I can't necessarily comment on any commitments that were made at that stage. It's worth picking up on Jonathan's point about leaders, and just to give a bit of context, so two things. Firstly, my role is, I have a role in the Central Digital and Data Office, which is part of Cabinet Office, and essentially we're here to not only establish strategy, but also to help colleagues across government, all of those people who are working tirelessly sort of day in, day out to build skills, to accelerate a lot of the work that they're doing. In that context, we've referred a couple of times on this call to DDAT. So DDAT relates to the digital data and technology profession. And it's a bit of an acronym that we use across government to summarize our world. There was a point that Jonathan made about needing to have leaders that, I suppose, understand the role that they can play in digital transformation. So one of the characteristics of the way that government works is very akin to the way many large corporates worked, probably sort of back end of the 1990s, where we did very centralized corporate workforce planning, and we put everybody in little buckets. We said you're either a commercial person, or you're a HR person, or you're a digital person, or you work in operations. And we still like those categories in the civil service because we're evolving our workforce planning. But when we look outside and we take our lead from other organisations, we can see a much more expansive view of what future leaders need to be. And that typically is characterised by future leaders who are transformative, who are highly orientated around the customer experience, who understand how they can pivot and bring lots of different roles, different skills into play to really successfully deliver for their end users. There's a recognition now in government that we need to do the same, and we need to equip every senior civil servant and every leader across government with the skills that they need to play their part in not only delivering the existing services, but delivering future services. So that means giving them skills in how to be user-minded, how to work with an innovation mindset, how to really use data. And this is this notion of giving all of our leaders those kind of skills to play their part is fully recognised now, and I can talk a bit later on about the kind of things that we're doing to make that happen.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if Lee could add to that conversation how we support those, Lee, and how you support those in your organisation leading transformation.
Absolutely, and again, completely agree with the comments that have been made. So we do need to focus on leadership, and I think we need to recognise as well that leadership exists in all job roles and grades. It's not necessarily somebody who is just in a very senior management position. So we need to reflect on all of that. There are a few things that we can do there. We can target, so we can look at specific bands or grades or levels of seniority, and we can focus around specialized skill sets as well as generic skill sets. And a very brief example of that, a recent program that we've been delivering in Scotland for chief executives and senior directors across the public sector, has focused around aspects of cyber security. But we don't necessarily need the senior leaders to have a good understanding of all the technical details that sit behind that, but they do need to understand business resilience, business continuity, and they need to be able to surround themselves with the skill sets that they need to be able to inform good practices within the organisation, which then relates to all of those other conversations around digital recruitment, retention, skill sets, and culture as well. And I think the cultural piece is really important. We also think around leadership sometimes in isolation, and we have to recognise that we need to bring people together. So in Scotland, what we tend to do, and I'm sure that there's other aspects of this elsewhere across UK, we try and bring leaders together. So if you're a chief executive in an organisation, one of the best bits of professional learning you can engage with is actually where you're networking and speaking with other senior leaders, sometimes in comparable organisations and sometimes in very different organisations, to get different perspectives, to share experiences, to learn from each other, to collaborate, to co-construct. So there's all of that in the mix, and we have to be able to scaffold and provide opportunities for people to engage in those kind of scenarios.
That events like this do a bit of that as well, getting everybody around the table. Youssef, as organisations do look to build out their training programmes, we're just talking there about best practices or sharing best practices with leaders, but can you share some best practices maybe of what organisations should be considering when they're looking at designing and then launching a programme?
Certainly. From my perspective, there's three things I think that organizations can do to really scale the effectiveness of their learning programs. The first of these is about leadership from the top. You really need to recruit executive sponsors that can establish a vision for learning and really set that example for others. What we found at Coursera is that our most successful customers have been the ones where there's been a really visible presence by their executive leadership to really prioritize and promote the value of skill development. Probably most famously was Vas, who's the CEO of Novartis, the global pharmaceutical company. And he was actually recording videos in his son's bedroom during the pandemic of him learning on Coursera and uploading it to the company intranet to encourage the staff to kind of take this seriously and seize the opportunity. The second of these is to start simply. Quite often what we find is when we speak to customers, they come in with very ambitious transformation agendas that, of course, also really mirrored by very ambitious skill development agendas. And I think it's really important to set realistic expectations in terms of what can be achieved. How can you really kind of walk before you can run? How can you focus on common skills that everybody could benefit from? How do you protect time for learning? And how do you help people get some quick wins to really drive more of that? And the third aspect of that is really how can you embed learning within the organization? How can you link training to employee career development? How do you regularly communicate ongoing themes and campaigns and really kind of make learning part of a company's DNA? And a really good example of this is some work we're doing with a telco in Bahrain. And for them, their big focus has been digital transformation. They sort of said, look, we need to shift from being a telco to a techco, much like many companies are today. But for them, what they found was the best way to be able to do this to actually create like a little digital transformation, almost skill set program that the entire company was assigned. And everybody was working towards building that same foundation in digital transformation, everyone from the CEO all the way down to the most junior analysts in the company. And it was a great way to really just gamify the experience and really get everybody speaking the same language, feeling like they're part of one big learning cohort. And it's a great way to really accelerate that and really think about long-term, how you can continuously refine, optimize, and just maintain that interest and keep promoting your learning programs.
Oh, it sounds a fantastic idea. Heather, what about the tech industry? How can the tech industry support this transformation?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really goodwill among tech companies to support the government in addressing the skills gap. And I always hate to talk about the skills gap as if it's one big monolithic thing where there are definitely different skills and different levels, and there are some very technical things that a very small group of people need to be skilled in, but there are other broader skills that a wider range of people need. But I think, and there needs to be an addressing of that, throughout. And I think, Lee made a really good point in terms of there's leadership, and then there's, leaders and that aren't in those sort of, senior positions, and everyone needs to be upskilled in that way. But sort of returning to how tech companies can support, particularly when we look at that, those very specialized skills where everyone, there's a smaller pool, and, we're competing with government and private sector all wanting to retain and that talent. But I think, there's an understanding that, we don't want to work at cross purposes, and, there are lots of different options that can be explored, from like outsourcing to secondments and other sorts of support. But I think the important thing is this recognition that, tech companies want to support the government in addressing that gap and want to be a useful partner in that. And, we'll definitely willing to explore ways to make that work well for everyone.
Good to hear. Jonathan, I noticed you've been making a lot of notes. You're either writing the shopping list there or you've been noting some comments from other guests. Sometimes I think it's nice just to give somebody breathing space to ask if there's anything you want to add. We've covered so many different areas and we've got a panel of 5. So any thoughts you want to add to the conversation so far?
Some very interesting points. I mean, Thomas, yes, the point about leadership, that's interesting. You say you weren't around in 2015. I mean, this is an area that we've been following for a long time, and you can look at 25 years of digital strategies. I mean, you can go back to modernising government and back to 1999, and there've been all manner of really good strategies since then. But for us, the question is, why have they been so difficult to implement in practice? And I think that's why we're interested in what makes it, what's going to make it work this time round. So you alluded to the 2025 digital and data roadmap, and perhaps we'll come on to that in a later question.
Well, that was actually going to be my next question for Thomas. I wondered, Thomas, how confident you feel that departments will be able to fulfill the ambitions that have been very clearly set out in the roadmap?
That's a good question. So I think we are confident, and we're confident because there's been a very significant change, I think, this time around, in 3 ways. So the first thing is that the strategy that was developed with cross-government input and support. So every department contributed to all of the different parts of that strategy. And we ultimately identified a set of commitments, and you shared a bit earlier on the capability commitments, but there are commitments across all different missions in that strategy. That those commitments were ultimately agreed and signed up to by not only CDIOs and CDOs, CTOs across government, but also our permsecs. And it was the permsecs who are the people who were ultimately accountable for the running of each department, who said this is a really important signal of intent for not only our digital functions, but our ability to deliver services for citizens. We've not created a strategy in the same way before, and there has not been the same level of collective, collective responsibility being taken by leaders across government. It feels hugely significant. The other 2 things that are different is, the first one is capability is now on the agenda. Skills are now a critical priority. We have many strategies and many signals of intent, and the narrative is always in government about delivery for taxpayers, for citizens, for our users. There is a very, very real recognition now that driving the right levels of capability and skills is as critical to our business as the end delivery in its own right. And there is a significant change I think we're starting to see in terms of resource allocation and protecting our resources. And then the third area I think that is different this time is this recognition that everybody has a role to play. It's not just about these digital makers. It's not just about techies or nerds or people who know the ins and outs and the nitty-gritty of these solutions. It's about everybody playing their part, from those users who are facing citizens on the front line, being able to articulate user need, to thinking through really carefully what are the characteristics of a service that can deliver the kind of outcomes that we want. And I've not seen before this level of understanding, certainly across the leadership teams, and I wouldn't claim that it's there across the whole organization, but certainly across leadership teams, there is a new understanding of the role that everybody needs to start to play to be able to fully leverage, I suppose, the opportunity that digital gives us.
I think, Yusuf, a clear signal of intent is really encouraging, isn't it, with the roadmap? Delivery, though, is key. I mean, it's, there's lots of roadmaps are done in different sectors, and some sadly end up being sound bites and intent as opposed to action. How can a company like yours, Yusuf, support and help and make sure that those intentions actually lead to action and positive change within the digital skills area?
That's a great question. I think, like you mentioned, there's a lot of good intention sometimes, and execution is really quite challenging. I think there's a few things that we can offer that make us quite unique. I think the first one is the kind of the scale and the global perspective that we have. Today we work with over 100 different governments around the world in a variety of different ways, both in terms of public sector upskilling, but also importantly, a lot of work these days around workforce development too. And so one of the really nice things that we're able to offer is a really good perspective around what are the skills that are trending amongst government learners? What are we seeing? But then importantly, working with our customers to not just work on kind of, the curation and the planning and kind of providing the content, but really working, through customer success as well to really help better understand how we measure success as well, really shifting away from output indicators, talking about hours on the site or courses completed, but really talking towards result indicators, thinking about how has this skill development contributed to reductions in time, reductions in cost, increases in productivity, and so on.
Quick final word to Heather and Lee, because I'm running out of time now. But Lee, what can be done right now to support those who want to develop their own digital capability and digital talent? People like the people sitting in the audience thinking, I need to improve. What can they do?
Okay, so I'll try and answer that as succinctly as I can, given we're running out of time.
You're okay. You've got a minute or two. Don't talk too much.
Yeah, I'll do it as quickly as I can. I think the most important thing is actually having an understanding of self, where your own strengths currently sit, because we all come with different experiences and skills, and there will be some skill that already exists. So it's trying to understand where your strengths are and building upon those, and perhaps considering where you think your strengths perhaps are not and you perhaps need to develop. And I would always encourage coaching conversations with line managers. I would start to seek out opportunities for some kind of self-diagnostic or audit, which sounds very formal but is really important. And then to seek out opportunities. And there are plenty of opportunities out there through various different means. And we've heard some of those potential opportunities today. And I would suggest just make sure you carve time for your own professional learning. That's really important. You have to set that aside. Otherwise, it just gets mixed in with the day job and it becomes something that you very rarely get around to doing.
That was very succinct. Heather, anything you want to add there about anybody looking to try and develop digitally?
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with what Lee said, and sort of add that, you don't have to necessarily consider yourself to be like, some sort of coder sitting in a dark room over a computer. Like, I think everyone needs to sort of develop their own digital skills. And, I think that the more people understand it and have an appreciation for what digital transformation can mean for the jobs that they're doing, the better it will be for the end result. I think, if you're working in HR or you're working in finance, you still need to have an appreciation for, what digital transformation means. And I think, that will only add to sort of delivering the end result that everyone is after. So definitely everyone should consider themselves a techie in that regard and, embrace that inner techie.
And just finally, Jonathan, having heard everything you've heard so far and being aware of the roadmap, are you hopeful that perhaps when you do your next report, things might be looking a bit brighter and developments and progress will have been made?
Well, I definitely agree with Thomas that the way the roadmap's being developed is unprecedented level of collaboration with departments and getting buy-in, and not just going for moonshots, but something that's realistic and achievable by 2025. And we do wish it every success. But as I said, making it stick will be key, and it is a difficult external market out there. So I think time and events will tell, but I think the omens are as good as they've ever been. So as I say, we do wish it every success, and we hope we succeed.
Well, that's good to end the first panel on the omens being as good as they've been. So thank you very much to our first panelists for kicking off the day with a really great conversation there. My thanks to Jonathan, to Youssef, Heather, Thomas and Lee. We're going to take a break now, time to digest what's been covered so far. And if you have a chance, do engage with speed networking opportunity. You never know, perhaps you can use some of what you've learned there in the first panel as a bit of an icebreaker. I'll see you back here in 10 minutes time.